Patriots, rebels, outlaws, and pirates. I haven't heard a lot of comparisons recently about the fall of the Roman Empire and the current trajectory of America. I suppose the majority believe with the ascent of old King Joe to the presidency, America will be saved from whatever destruction President Trump was supposed to have visited upon us. Somehow we think we're different. I'm sure the Romans did as well. They were once a republic with a constitution, lived under the rule of law, and the system created great wealth. By the time of Marcus Tullius Cicero, who lived to see the rise of Caesar, the foundations of that republic were gone. If we take a look at some moments of his life and his comments on his time, I think you will see some eerie parallels. Now, young Cicero was an idealistic law student under the legal star of his day, Scaevola. By this time, Rome, by force of arms, guile, and trickery, dominated much of the world. Its citizens had grown wealthy and fat. Ignorant or indifferent to their rights, they had become apathetic about the ruthless politicians who craved ever more power and riches. Cicero's first client was a wealthy businessman, a man of integrity who believed in and trusted the system and his fellow man. But there were powerful men in government who coveted his wealth and used the power of bureaucracy to destroy him. The young idealistic Cicero submitted documentary proof of his client's innocence to the judges, confident that with such irrefutable proof, justice would prevail. Now, needless to say, the case was not going as he expected. So he consulted his mentor, Scaevola, and asked the reason for his failure. Scaevola, disgusted, pounded the table and he said, "Imbecile! Of what use are records presented to tribunes, consuls, or senators if the government is determined to rob and destroy a man who had displeased them, or who possesses what they want? Have I truly wasted all these years on such an idiot as this Marcus Tullius Cicero?" Sound familiar? A justice department weaponized against those who dare confront the swamp. A knee-jerk media who condemns without the facts. Show trials of men like President Trump and his allies. We do not live under the rule of law, but of men who pervert the law or ignore it altogether to destroy their enemies and protect their friends. A two-tier justice system is the very definition of injustice. Now, this particular client was ruined through confiscatory and unjust taxation. And what Cicero has to say in his defense is chilling in its description of America. Before the Roman Senate, he pleaded his case with these words: "We are taxed in our bread and our wine, in our incomes and our investments, on our land and on our property, not only for base creatures who do not deserve the name of man, but for foreign nations, for complacent nations who will bow to us and accept our largesse and promise us to assist us in keeping of the peace, these medicine nations who will destroy us when we show a moment of weakness or our treasury is bare. We are taxed to maintain legions on their soil in the name of law and order and the Pax Romana, a document which will fall into dust when it pleases our allies and our vassals. We keep them in precarious balance only with our gold. Is the heartblood of our nation worth these? Shall one Italian be sacrificed for Britain, for Gaul, for Egypt, for India, even for Greece, and a score of other nations? Were they bound to us with ties of love, they would not ask for our gold. They would ask only for our laws. They take our very flesh, and they hate and despise us. And who shall say we are worthy of more?" Is this not a perfect description of our current situation? Tax on every activity to pay for those who hold the enslaved contributor in contempt, both domestically and abroad. Do many of our supposed allies in the world not despise us? Obama dropped billions in cash at an airfield in Iran. King Joe will no doubt do the same. Will they not continue to chant death to America along with the Saudis and others? When our economy and currency are destroyed, you don't think old King Joe's Chinese friends will turn on us overtly and gladly take our position in the world as top dog, with many cheering them on? We learn nothing from history and continue to throw good money after bad. At least President Trump tried to hold our allies accountable and halted some of this stupidity by stopping the flow of money to people like the Palestinians and others. Now the spigot's going to be turned back on with full force. Cicero did not win his case. His client was bankrupted. But he spent his life pleading the cause of fair and honest government. Unfortunately, a losing proposition then as it is now. His discussions with Sulla, who had little faith in the people, were recorded. Sulla believed the vast majority of people were wrapped up in themselves and their own welfare and too timid to stand up for their natural rights. He told Cicero the middle class, the lawyers, the physicians, the bankers, the merchants, they'd make no sacrifices. He said, none of your lawyers will challenge the lawmakers and cry to them, this is unconstitutional, an affront to free people, and it must not pass. He asked Cicero, will one of these, your own, lift his eyes from his ledgers long enough to scan the 12 tables of Roman law and then expose those who violate them and help to remove them from power, even if it costs their lives? These fat men, will 6 of them in this city, disregarding personal safety, rise up from their offices and stand in the forum and tell the people the inevitable fate of Rome unless they return to virtue and thrift and drive from the Senate the evil men who have corrupted them for the power they have to bestow? Is this us? How few true whistleblowers in government will stand up for truth and against the swamp in today's cancel culture? Too many hold faith in Republicans, but they did nothing substantial to contest the election or do more than occasionally slow our descent into tyranny for decades. Ultimately, they're cowards. How many of us will risk our money, our comfortable lifestyle, even our lives, to stop complying with and feeding the beast that desires our complete subjugation? Are Americans really unique? Or are we no different than the Romans or any other people? I guess time will tell. Cicero battled against Catiline, a brilliant, ambitious, and evil man who was attempting to overthrow the Roman Republic decades before Caesar. He was using emergencies to destroy the liberties of the people. Sound familiar? He was also trying to silence those who disagreed. Also familiar. Cicero, standing before the Senate, had this to say: too long have we said to ourselves, intolerance of another's policies is barbarous and not to be countenanced in a civilized country. Are we not free? Shall a man be denied his right to speak under the law which established that right? I tell you that freedom does not mean the freedom to exploit law in order to destroy it. It is not freedom which permits the Trojan horse to be wheeled within the gates. He who is not for Rome and Roman law and Roman liberty is against Rome. He who espouses tyranny and oppression and the old dead despotisms is against Rome. He who plots against established authority and incites the populace to violence is against Rome. He cannot ride 2 horses at the same time. He cannot be for lawful ordinances and for an alien conspiracy at one and the same moment. Hypocrisy is nothing to those whose only value is power. They are happy to incite violence when it suits them and condemn it when it might work against them. They proclaim the sacredness of the Constitution as they destroy its spirit and letter. They abuse the lovers of liberty and freedom by perverting those very words. Cicero continued, though liberty is established by law, we must be vigilant, for liberty to enslave us is always present under that very liberty. Our Constitution speaks of the general welfare of the people. Under that phrase, all sorts of excuses can be employed by lusting tyrants to make us bondsmen. I need not even comment on that. The excess of our government and their enslavement of us under the guise of providing for that general welfare are obvious to anyone with eyes. Now Cicero eventually became consul, and he did his best to stop the waste and thievery. Of course, the corrupt could not let that stand, and sought to remove and banish him. Does that sound familiar as well? Pleading his own case before the Senate, he stated, the Senate, in truth, has no right to censure me for anything, for I did but my duty and exposed traitors and treason against the state. If that is a crime, then I am indeed a criminal. As he spoke, Crassus, Caesar, and Pompey were all present and agreed with his banishment. His smile was sad as he spoke. You have succeeded against me. Be it as you will. I will depart. And then he told them all, for this day's work, lords, you have encouraged treason and opened the prison doors to free the traitors. A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. An enemy at the gates is less formidable, for he is known and he carries his banners openly against the city. But the traitor moves among those within the gates freely, his sly whispers rustling through the alleys, heard in the very halls of government itself. For the traitor appears no traitor. He speaks in the accents familiar to his victims, and he wears their face in their garments, and he appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of the nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of a city. He infects the body politique so it can no longer resist. A murderer is less to be feared. The traitor is the carrier of plague, and you have unbarred the gates of Rome to him. The corrupt enemies of America now reside in the highest offices of the land and protect the traitors to the Republic who began the coup 5 years ago. They speak the language of liberty but betray its every principle for their own gain. To the left, the statist, the Democrat Party that embraces the ideology of Marx and Lenin, and their enablers among the so-called opposition are surely rotting the soul of our nation. The plague they have brought will be our end. Exiled from politics, Cicero continued to fight against corruption, but Sulla was right. The people he knew, the businessmen, the doctors, the lawyers, Rome's middle class told him, "We do not meddle in politics. Rome is prosperous and at peace. We have our villas in Capri, our racing vessels, our houses, our servants, our pretty mistresses, our comfort and treasures. We implore you, Cicero, do not disturb us with your lamentations of disaster. Rome is on the march to a mighty society for all Romans." Until the barbarians are at the gates, no one believes the gravy train's going to end. No one wants to hear the truth. They enjoy their delusion too much. Cicero despaired of ever being able to make a change. He wrote a book, but his publisher asked, "Who will read it? Romans care nothing for law any longer. Their bellies are too full." Cicero was truly a voice crying in the wilderness. So who was to blame for the death of the Roman Republic? Was it Caesar? Brutus thought so, but Cicero bitterly corrected him. He said, "Do not blame Caesar. Blame the people of Rome who have so enthusiastically acclaimed and adored him and rejoiced in their loss of freedom and danced in his path and gave him triumphal processions and laughed delightedly at his licentiousness and thought it very superior of him to acquire vast amounts of gold illicitly. Blame the people who hail him when he speaks in the form of a new, wonderful, good society, which shall now be Rome's, interpreted to mean more money, more ease, more security, more living fatly at the expense of the industrious. Julius was always an ambitious villain, but he's only one man. We the people make up this great nation, but too many, perhaps you're one of them, have willingly traded freedom for the security offered by the charlatans who fleece us and desire to reduce us to slavery. While there may or may not be a majority who give lip service, at least, to the Constitution of the Republic, there is no question that the vast majority are comfortable receiving the largesse stolen from the productive, and now from a multitude of future generations. Who is willing to jeopardize all the temporary benefits of a frayed and strained safety net? We have sold our freedom and our future for the hope that the government will provide all our needs and fix all of society's problems. Of course, to those who understand liberty and human nature, none of this is a surprise, and the founders, who were all too familiar with Cicero, saw it as well. Patrick Henry, who thought the Constitution gave way too much power to the national government, warned us to be, quote, extremely cautious, watchful, jealous of our liberty. Instead of securing your rights, you may lose them forever. He also said there will be no checks, no real balances in this government. And looking ahead, he said, this government will destroy the state governments and swallow the liberties of the people. Benjamin Franklin thought things would be well run for a time, but then it would end in despotism. And Thomas Jefferson gave a name to its form when he said that it would become an oligarchy. They were right. They warned us, but nothing's preordained or predetermined. We yet have free will. We choose our path. We choose whether our liberty is worth defending. If liberty gained is not highly valued, there will always be men and women who will gladly reduce us to servitude for their own ends. The choice is ours. The struggle is not over. It only ends when we give up. May there yet be enough men and women of courage who will restore all that has been lost, who will rescue our most noble experiment from the jaws of destruction, a new generation of patriots who will pledge their lives, their fortunes, and sacred honor to the most worthy cause of all.